You're listening to the Savage Lovecast, Dan Savage's sex and relationship show for grown-ups. If you're under 18, get out of here, youngin'.
If you're stuck in a relationship quandary, or if you're looking for sexual harmony, well, there's nothing you can't ask on the Savage Lovecast.
I'm going to keep this short. Therapy Jeff is back on the show this week. He's here to give us the mental health support we need as we brace for Thanksgiving, and we need a lot of bracing. So I go along with Therapy Jeff, which means I got to keep this week's intro short, but I got to talk about Felch. Felch is a city in Michigan. You don't have to take my word for it. You can go right now to michigan.org/city/Felch. Felch, according to the city's website, is for the adventuresome, which tracks. Sadly, Felch, Michigan, which offers hiking and snowmobiling and mountain biking adventures along the 45-mile Felch Trail. Sadly, that is not the Felch we are having a national dialogue about right now. Now, we are having a national dialogue, whether we like it or not, about Felch, the Sex Act, which was referenced in a poem that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is alleged to have sent to disgraced, then rehabilitated, then re-disgraced journalist Olivia Nuzzi, who is allowed to live her life and fuck whoever she wants, but man, that woman has terrible taste in men. Mark Sanford, Ryan Lizza, RFK Jr., who apparently wanted to felch Nuzzi and put it in writing. It's been fun watching people who know what felching is, people of a certain age, pretend this week not to know. I am not going to tell you what it is. If you know, you know. If you do not know, good for you. But if you grew up in the 70s or the 80s or 90s, it was one of those gross out sex acts that straight boys constantly talked about gay guys doing, even though anyone can do it, like gerbling, another gross out sex act straight boys in the 70s, 80s, and 90s talked about gay men doing, even though everyone has a butthole and anyone can walk into a pet store. If you're gay, a gay man of a certain age, particularly if you are this gay man, it's been a weird week. I used to get a lot of questions at Savage Love in the early days before people could Google shit for themselves about what felch was, about what felch meant, which is how I came to find out about Felch, Michigan. I looked it up in an atlas and then cold called a bunch of people in Felch to ask them what felching was, and none of them knew. So I pretended I couldn't possibly know either and couldn't tell my readers what it was. It was a joke, not entirely a fair one. Looking back to the unsuspecting people of Felch that I managed to get on the phone, but gay men of a certain age whose straight friends asked us when we came out if we were felching, we can now take solace in the fact that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., perhaps the straightest man alive, the serial adulterer who is currently dismantling our public health system and is going to get us all killed, we can take some solace in the fact that he is now the face of felching. And if felching had a face, it would look like his. So, felching, not a gay thing anymore, a straight thing now, or a Kennedy thing, or a straight Kennedy thing. Whatever it is not now and never was our thing. All right, for our 1000th episode of the Savage Lovecast, which is coming up in January, we are putting out a quickie show. Quick and dirty questions, quick and dirty answers. Record your question, 1 minute or less question, on your phone now and send it to q@savage.love, or head on over to savage.love/askdan and record your 1 minute or less question if you want to be a part of our 1000th episode. All right, coming up on this week's episode, our old pal, again, Jeff Gunther, Therapy Jeff, is here to give us all a pre-Thanksgiving mental health pep talk. And while Jeff was here, something very on brand for Thanksgiving happened. Jeff and I got into an argument. Also, on this week's show, a woman who is convinced she is unskilled in bed wonders if she could hire a sex teacher, and a man wonders if he should go ahead and hit on his neighbor. All that and more coming right up on this week's show.
This episode of the Lovecast is brought to you by the good folks at Squarespace. They make it easy to build a beautiful website, blog, or online store. Head on over to squarespace.com/savage for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the offer code SAVAGE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
This episode is brought to you by Field, an app where curious people come to connect. Download Field on the App Store or Google Play and find out why so many of my listeners are already using it. This episode is brought to you by CareFM, an abortion and reproductive healthcare provider. CareFM offers both in-person care in Atlanta, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and telehealth options for abortion pills by mail in 20 states. CareFM's team of licensed medical professionals provide personalized abortion care options focused on your needs, preferences, and values. Visit carefm.org to learn more. That's carafem.org to learn more.
Hi Dan, I'm a cis woman in my late 20s with a pansexual with a sort of preference towards cis men sexually. I've had pretty vanilla experiences with sex. I was asexual for quite a long time during my early 20s, so some of the sort of formative years when a lot of my friends were sort of developing like sexual preferences and things like that. And unfortunately, I'm not very good in bed. I just know I can't really find rhythm. I sometimes freeze a bit and don't really know what to do. I also have a problem just with dissociating, which comes from sort of like some trauma, but it particularly happens during sex, not due to any sort of like sexual abuse, but just dissociative trauma from adverse childhood experiences. I'm at a bit of a loss as to what to do to try and get better. It's a bit awkward when you hook up with somebody and you're not very good. It can be a bit damaging to your self-esteem when you sort of know that they know. And I don't necessarily want a relationship, so I don't really want to like build up all that trust first with somebody. I want to be able to have sort of free sexual experiences that are liberating and evolve sexually and just feel free in that regard. I've wondered for a while about if there's a way to get some kind of tutorship with sex, you know, if there's any sort of sex teachers out there. I don't know if that's something that you would like pay a sex worker to help you with.
Thank you for listening to the show, and I'm glad it's helping. And I think there's something that you can do to really help yourself here, and we'll get to that in a second. If you have trauma from your childhood, you weren't sexually assaulted, you weren't sexually abused as a child, but there's something about your childhood that when you are trying to be sexual, it comes up for you, you begin to disassociate, it gets in the way, it interferes. You should definitely talk to a therapist about that and explore your therapeutic options. And they are many: cognitive behavioral therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing therapy. There's also psychedelic assisted therapies out there for people who've suffered all sorts of different traumas. It's been demonstrated in preliminary studies to be very effective. So you and your therapist, or under the supervision of a therapist, you could drop MDMA, eat a handful of magic mushrooms, and see where it goes. There are also, depending on where you live, there may be a therapist out there, a sex therapist out there, who could hook you up perhaps with a sexual sexual surrogacy, working with people who had anxieties or problems connecting sexually or worried about their performance and wanted to develop a basic skill set. It was kind of a booming field in the 60s, 70s, maybe into the 80s. But of course, the line between, well, I think there's a clearly identifiable line between a sex therapist or a sex surrogate working with a sex therapist and someone doing sex work. But people who oppose sex work and were scandalized by sex surrogacy or saw it as a kind of sex work made it almost impossible in most places for sex surrogacy to be a thing, to be an option for people who might benefit from it or need it, which then puts a lot of people who are sex workers in the position of having to do a kind of therapy. Everyone I know who I've ever spoken to who does sex work, every friend of mine who is a sex worker or did sex work for a time, have told me stories about clients where they spent more time talking than fucking and wound up giving people sex and relationship advice almost as often, or that burned up 50 minutes of the hour that the client purchased. And so there's this need out there for sexual surrogates that is met by people who may not be trained. You say you want to have liberated sexual experiences. You want to feel free. All right. You can liberate yourself. You can free yourself from the expectations of the people that you might be hooking up with. Your anxiety is probably rooted in this sense that you're no longer in your 20s, that you should be more sexually experienced, you should be better at sex, that you should be able to find a rhythm, that you should know what the things are in bed that work for you and that you like, and you don't know those things because you are very sexually inexperienced. And you can free yourself from the anxiety of the expectations of your partners around who you are or how you should be by telling them who you actually are and how you are. By saying to your partners, someone who's interested in you sexually, just looking them in the eye and saying to them, yeah, I didn't fuck at all in my 20s and I am still learning. And so I would love to fuck you, but you're going to have to lead. It's a dance and you're going to have to lead. And I am down to be led and to experiment. Of course, with things that I'm comfortable doing. That doesn't mean if you're leading, you get to do whatever you want with me. But don't go in. You should tell your partner, a potential partner, don't go in expecting me like to know my way around. I am still feeling my way around. And then once you've reset their expectations, once you've lowered the bar, you will be able to clear that bar. It is easy to match, beat, exceed the expectations of somebody that you've explained your situation to. That not that you're inept, not that you're bad at sex, but you're still learning your way around. You say you're mostly attracted to cis males, learning your way around dick-having people. And that sometimes you have a little bit of anxiety about it. And what you need is a partner, a sex partner, even a casual sex partner who understands that and still wants to fuck. I'm not saying you won't wind up in bed with guys who pretend to understand that and still want to fuck and are not considerate and patient in the way that you might need them to be and have a right to expect them to be. You're allowed to have expectations of your own, but your chances of winding up in bed with guys who will go slow, take their time, be patient, be understanding, go way the fuck up if you've told those guys not just what it is you need, but who you need them to be. You know, we can't be for people who they need us to be in a very specific way if they don't tell us who they need us to be. Some guys you're going to say, I need you to be this kind of guy. Patient, understanding, compassionate, go slow because I'm still learning what it is I like and what it is I want. And a guy won't be able to be that guy for you. And he'll get up and go. He'll leave. It'll feel like rejection, but it's a good kind of rejection. That's not a guy you will have a beneficial sexual experience with. But you'll say that to some guys, and it's not like they'll think it's a challenge. They'll think it's an honor to get to be that person that you need them to be for you at that moment. And that's how you free and liberate yourself from the anxiety of other people's expectations, which may be out of whack because they look at you and they see this attractive woman in her 30s and they assume that you have a sexual history and perhaps a sexual felicity because of your sexual history, or a knowledge and awareness of what works for you sexually that you don't have. Once they know that you don't have it, you are freed from their expectations and hopefully liberated just a little bit from your anxieties. Go talk to a therapist about this. Go see a shrink.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. It's the all-in-one website platform designed to help you stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just getting started or scaling your business, Squarespace gives you everything you need to claim your domain, showcase your offerings with a professional website, grow your brand, and get paid all in one place. How would you like to be a cutting-edge designer? Chances are you'll never be one. But with Squarespace, you'll look like a graphics design warlock because your site will be so clever and sleek. With Squarespace's collection of cutting-edge design tools, anyone, even you, can build a bespoke online presence that perfectly fits your brand or business. Squarespace also offers a complete library of professionally designed and award-winning website templates with options for every use and category. No matter where you start, your website is flexible to what you need, with intuitive drag-and-drop editing, beautiful styling options, unrivaled visual design effects, and on-brand AI content, and more ways to list what you offer. No experience required. And that's just how your site will look. They also offer so many back-end features that make running your business work the way you want it to. Fundraising, e-commerce, appointment setting, email campaigns. The list of helpful products goes on and on. Squarespace is like a savvy business partner who will help you get in the game. Head on over to squarespace.com/savage for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use offer code SAVAGE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/savage and use the offer code SAVAGE.
All right, gang, my guest today is returning champ Jeff Gunther, LPC. You may know him as Therapy Jeff on TikTok and Instagram, author of Big Dating Energy, How to Create Lasting Love by Tapping into Your Authentic Self. And he hosts the Problem Solved podcast. Jeff, Therapy Jeff, welcome back to the Savage Lovecast.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I always love to be on.
You are also the guy who thinks of me first whenever one of your listeners asks you a question about their boyfriend getting their ass eaten by a dog. I just leap instantly to mind when a dog is eating an ass and you hear about it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah, no problem. That one felt like a little bit above my pay grade. And I was like, I know exactly who to talk about a dog eating somebody's asshole. And it made me feel uncomfortable. And I think I even said in our messages back and forth, I was just like, is there something wrong with me that I'm not accepting this? Is this some sort of kink that makes me feel uncomfy and I need to grow and evolve? Or I feel like you can be the judge of that.
No, it is not a kink that you need to grow and evolve or accept. And we talked about this. You talked about this on your show. We talked about it in the column. I don't want to devote too much time to this here. Of course, the issues of consent and da-da-da-da. But something we didn't talk about is these kinks that are so transgressive. We actually, not that I want to do any favors for people who have sex with dogs, but we actually do a kind of favor for people when we keep freaking out about these kinks. Because one of the things people into really extreme kinks, eating shit, this sort of thing, I think part of what informs the turn on for them is the disgust this activity would arouse in a normie or a civilian or someone who doesn't share the kink. So I don't feel bad about kink shaming dog fuckers. I think they should be kink shamed. We don't want people fucking dogs. But then in a weird way, I think I'm actually like giving the dog fuckers a little bit of a boost when I go deep on kink shaming them.
I think you might be. It also makes me, I wondered many years ago whether or not Donald Trump has like a humiliation kink and likes to look and read about all this shit where we're like blasting him and telling him he's fucking horrible. Like, is he getting off on this? So am I just like part of his kink and he's loving it? And it makes me feel pretty uncomfortable.
Speaking of things that make us feel uncomfortable, it is Thanksgiving on Thursday. Anybody who does a sex and relationship advice show, I'm sure it's going to come up on your show too. The excellent Problem Solved. I am a listener. We have to do in the run up to Thanksgiving and then the holidays, your Trumpy uncle. How do you deal with relatives you hate or disagree with? How do you get through the holidays if your FOO, family of origin, doesn't accept your sexuality, your gender identity, is freaking out about you being poly or ace or whatever?
Right.
What is your advice, Therapy Jeff, for getting through the holidays if you're stuck with around a dining room table with people you can't stand and can't stand you?
Yeah. Are you stuck with them? Actually, do you have to go? Because if you don't have to go, then don't fucking go. But consider the Therapy Jeff of it all. Just a little bit about my background. The first Thanksgiving I remember is when I was 5 years old and my parents told me and my sister that they're getting a divorce. So there was a real, they tainted Thanksgiving for me very early on. Also, keep in mind that I have gone no contact with half of my family. So absolutely no fucking chance am I going to that bullshit Thanksgiving. And there was something very empowering, 10 or so years ago when I decided to stop going to Thanksgiving, flying down to LA from Portland. But it's usually the question that I ask everybody is do you actually have to go? Or is it because the parents or the family is just expecting you to? Because you have a choice here.
I have in my notes, Thanksgiving is optional. Everything is optional. Yes. And I've said to people for years, your presence is your leverage. And if your family can't treat you with respect, you don't have to show up to get punched in the face. And there are worse things than being alone on Thanksgiving. I've been alone on Thanksgiving. in a weird place all by myself. And there's something existentially kind of like interesting about being alone when everyone else is together if you just throw yourself into it.
Yeah, 100%. And there's also like, you can go to the whatever friends Thanksgivings, you can volunteer, you can like be around community if that's what you want, or you can be fucking punk rock and do your own thing. So that's the first question.
How do you know when your family's reached that tipping point where, you know, sometimes families get over your being poly or ace or whatever, or coming out as trans or being queer because you get together at Thanksgiving and you have it out a little bit. When do you know, when does the sunk cost fallacy kick into gear with this sort of engagement? Because we don't want everybody who's changing or coming out or has something about them challenges their family's assumptions or prejudices just to like disappear forever, because it's often the like presence of the gay relative that helps people get over their homophobia, the gay kid or the gay nephew. A lot of my uncles were really homophobic, and like me being there and my mother threatening to kill them if they were rude to me helped them get over it. So there is some benefit to us when we show up in the face of some disapproval and some friction with our families of origin. But how do you know when it's too much? How do you know when to bail? You said you've gone no contact with half your family. What was it? Where you were like, okay, no more of this. I'm not going home for Thanksgiving, or I'm not seeing these people if I do. How did you make that call?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a good point. Are you having a positive influence on anybody in the family that maybe needs it and doesn't have a voice or is too young, like a nephew or a niece or a younger cousin or something like that? Like, can you be a role model and stand in your authenticity and show them that, like, you know, there's you don't deserve this fucking bullshit that's being thrown at you. So it can be really inspiring. I don't have anybody like that in my family. there's no like younger kids that like need my inspiration. So there's that. Maybe that could change eventually. But I think that it was like, for me, there was, not only was I feeling really upset and anxious and angry and frustrated when I was going down there, but other people were feeling that as well. So I knew that like my entire presence there was upsetting the whole apple cart, which before I kind of like enjoyed that. I enjoyed that I was ruffling feathers and making people uncomfortable. And one of the roles in my family is like, I'm just going to hold up a mirror to everybody and be like, this is what you're fucking doing. And there's nothing I could do in order to like change the family system so that people could like see what they're doing and learn and grow and evolve.
Please have a plate of your bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't figure out anything positive. And when I like told myself that I didn't have to go, or when a therapist was like, why the fuck are you going? There was so much relief and liberation in that I just knew in my gut, in my soul, that it was time for me to stop going. So I think that if you can really check in with yourself about whether or not this is a good idea or a bad idea, like your heart, your intuition already knows.
I'd like to speak for the people who don't have these kinds of conflicts with their family. I always enjoyed Thanksgiving. I always enjoyed Christmas. Terry and I keep Christmas. Anybody who's seen our Instagrams around Christmas sees that it's like practically Macy's in our house around Christmas. It's so decorated. That said, a moment came where we were like, we are not getting on airplanes in November and December anymore. And we stopped going home. But we invited relatives who wanted to come to us. And we were going to create our own traditions. And our door was open. But this idea that we had to go halfway across the country at the worst time of year to travel, you know, if it had been a 45-minute drive or a 2-hour drive, we would have done it. And that was actually wonderful in a way. It helped us create our own traditions. But also then family did come to us, but not fucking all of them and not all at once and not on any one Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Right. Yeah.
You also have the power of not going if you don't want to see them. But if you just don't want to go because it's like a long way to go and a nightmare time of year to go, you have the power to invite them to come to you. You don't just have to go to them. Planes fly in both directions full of people.
Yeah, it's true. But if you have to go, I will say try your very best to like lower expectations. You don't have to be like incredibly emotionally mature around these people. If you don't want to, you can try. That'd be nice. But like lower your expectations for yourself. Decide what your role is going to be before you go. Like, are you going to be the one that's helping in the kitchen, playing video games with the kids, arguing with the uncles? Just at least like understand what you're going to do, like the role that you're going to play. Try your best, I guess. I don't take this if you want to like stick to emotionally neutral topics. This doesn't have to be your battleground. You don't have to go real hard if you don't want to. I'd also say pre-plan your exits, like create space throughout the fucking day, whether that's like in the bathroom or taking a walk around the block. And know that like for me, what really happened was like, do not take the bait. I was so bad at taking the bait. There are some fucking pot stirrers in my family that just want me to look like a piece of shit, and they're so good at doing it. Don't take that bait. It's also helpful if I have like a buddy there. So if there's like a cousin that I like or an aunt that's really cool, then I'm going to stick around that buddy. Try to like know that like if it gets tense, you can just name the dynamic. You don't have to be like, hey, you're being a piece of fucking shit. You can just be like, hey, I feel like this isn't a road that we should go down. And just sort of like name it and then walk away. You can protect your peace like it's like the most fragile organ that there ever was. You can remember that like for me, the number one thing that I needed to remember is that I'm not going to be able to reparent my parents or anybody else at this dumb shit Thanksgiving. So I'm going to like let go of that and let go of trying to be a therapist. Otherwise, I'm like working overtime.
I want to give a shout out to gay bars around Thanksgiving, on Thanksgiving, on Christmas. You need a place to go. You're going to go for a run. I always found it really wonderful just to say, I'm going to go meet a friend for a drink. And gay bars, and like I'm kind of inviting the straight people out there listening too, just don't all of you go all at once because then it's not a gay bar anymore. But like gay bars around the holidays, a lot of gay people have, even today, even still strained relationships with their families of origin. But guys pile into and dykes pile into the local queer bar, the bis and the trans folks. And there's just this sense of real community. Like people are looking around the room going, I know what, like we all know what we're going through right now. We're all home for the holidays. And this is our home away from that home. And I always found something transcendent about a gay bar on Christmas Eve, a gay bar on Thanksgiving Day. So if there's one near you and you're home and it's awful and you just want to be in a room full of people who are happy to be away from their families of origin just for a couple of hours, find a gay bar, especially a small town gay bar.
I think that's a really good idea.
Before we get to the questions, and we have a lot of questions for you today, I'm really going to detain you this time. We're not going to let you go. We're doing an extended Therapy Jeff special for Thanksgiving.
I love it.
You recently attracted the online attention of the incel community.
I did.
How was that for you?
I'm surprised that I didn't attract it a while ago, although maybe I have. I just haven't spent too much time on like the incel message boards. It came specifically from a video about a week ago where I was talking about, hey, what a fucking opportunity for men out there who are attracted to women. All they have to do is like grow emotionally. I mean, that's tricky. It's hard. But if you actually do work on your feeling your feelings and communicating them and trying to figure out how the patriarchy has affected you and blah, blah, blah. Like,
or as I say around here, be in good working order. That's all you got to be.
Yes,
You don't have to be perfect.
yes,
It doesn't mean
no.
you can ever break down. Just good working order.
Yes, because there's so many dudes out there who have been attracted to the manosphere or become groypers or whatever, like all this like fucking bullshit where they don't have to actually grow. They now are not really out there trying, like they're not that attractive to women. So there's now this like big gap that can be filled with people that are wanting to work on themselves. That video was trending on the incel message boards. And the reason that I found out about it is because somebody was like, oh, hey, there's people that are threatening your life on the incel message boards. And I was like, oh, I should check it out. Whenever I hear that happening, it's like, do I take it seriously? Do I not? Do I need to like...
And suddenly you're
make a
going home
police
for
report?
Thanksgiving, but just
Yeah.
to hide from the incels.
Right. But then I got into like trying to figure out what the fuck the messages meant because I could not decode what they were saying. And they were saying like, I had nail polish on in the video that they were complaining about. So they were like, well, we can't take this fucking guy serious, this fucking soy boy. And like just kind of like telling me like, he's fucking gay. He gets dicks in his ass. What the fuck does he know? And I was just like, no, it's because I'm punk rock. But whatever.
For the record, I do not have nail polish on right now.
Right,
and
yeah.
there's one guy in this interview who gets dicks in his ass, and it's not Therapy Jeff.
Exactly. So then they were like, disagreeing with me in like kind of interesting ways where there's like, Therapy Jeff doesn't know what he's fucking talking about because it's not about leveling up your emotional skills. That's not what women are actually going for. They're going for rich guys that are really fucking hot that have like perfect abs. So this fucking soy boy idiot is just saying like all we have to do is learn and have emotional intelligence when that's not actually the fucking case. So they were just like very much disagreeing with me. And I was like, oh, look how nice it is to just like how convenient it is to disagree with that so that you don't have to like emotionally grow. It really protects you from evolving at all. And then there was like this interesting term like Therapy Jeff is mogging us all. Have you heard this term before? Like he's mogging all of us on this message board?
haven't.
So there's like, yeah, well, whatever, he's mogging us, which means like Therapy Jeff is like he can get women so much better than we can. And we need to kind of be aware of that because he's comfortable in his skin. He's like emotionally developed and he has a girlfriend. So there's like, let's just like all take into consideration that even though we hate him, he's like doing better than us. So that was interesting.
So that was them conceding that you're doing something right. And perhaps there may be something in what you're saying that could help them as angry as they are?
No, but it's because there's something so wrong with them that I'll always be able to mog them. Even though like I'm giving them this advice or they've heard this fucking advice before, there's literally nothing they can do. No woman would ever fucking sleep with them because women only care about money. They only care about your dick size, whatever it is. Like these men will never get it. And so it's so much easier to be angry and so they can be angry with me.
And you had to admit to them that, yes, you're one of those billionaire therapists we've read so much about on the cover of the New York Times. The billionaire therapists all arrayed behind Trump at his second inauguration. Well, I felt bad when I follow you on Instagram, and I saw you say that you had attracted the attention of the incels on their boards, and I was worried for you. I knew that meant death threats. And
yes, it was death threats, but I did not feel like I had to make a police report. I think I'm okay.
All right. Therapy Jeff, we have a few questions that we wanted to toss your way.
Let's do it.
This episode is brought to you by CareFem. It's okay to want an abortion. Did you know 1 in 4 people who can get pregnant will have one, so it's actually more common than most people think. At CareFem, you can choose what type of abortion care works best for you. They have in-office locations with private entrances in Atlanta, Chicago, and the Washington, D.C. areas. And they also offer medically supported abortion pills by mail in 20 states with sliding scale pricing from $0 to $399. It's their mission to make sure abortion is accessible to everyone who needs or wants it. For some people, it's more comforting to come into a private office where they can visit with one of their medical providers and leave no longer pregnant or with abortion pills in hand. For others, they prefer to get abortion pills through the mail so they can decide the best time and place to complete the process. Getting abortion pills by mail from CareFem is simple. Fill out an online form and a licensed provider will review your medical history. And if eligible, your medication will be shipped to you in a couple of days. Cara, their text-based abortion companion, will guide you through the process from start to finish with instructions, reminders, and answers for all of your questions whenever they come up 24/7. With either choice, please know CareFem will support you every step of the way. Learn more at carafem.org. That's CARAFEM.org.
Hi, Dan. I am a 27-year-old queer woman who has been with my partner for almost 7 years now. Over the years, we have had on and off again issues with sex and intimacy due to many reasons. Mismatched libidos, living with our parents in the early years, feeling lack of autonomy over our bodies after various surgeries, and also her experience of chronic pain, very hectic mental health struggles, and an experience with workplace sexual assault. This year, we moved in together, and this closeness has made us feel really loved up and obsessed with each other, more so than ever, which has been really amazing. And we've been working towards a more regular and fulfilling sex life, and we've had a couple of candid conversations about this, about how to make things more regular, more fulfilling, how we can have intimacy that is a bit more trauma-informed and, you know, taking into account some of the stuff that she has gone through in the past. The last few times that we've had sex we've been feeling really connected. I'm feeling really good about our relationship, and she's also recently gone back on antidepressants and is feeling stable for the first time in a while as well. I have been interested in trying non-monogamy for quite a few years now, but I've never felt like it was the right time. early in our relationship, my partner offered for us to be non-monogamous so that I could explore my newly discovered queer identity. But I was too far into the honeymoon period at that time to be interested. And then about 2 years in, she offered again during a pretty tricky period of disconnect that we experienced. But I was really wary of this being a Band-Aid solution, and I would only want to go there when things were good between us, not when they were bad between us, which they were at the time. Her mental health has been pretty unstable over the course of our relationship. She suffers major depressive disorder, and it's been a lot for both of us. So yeah, I've not felt comfortable having this conversation during one of these really bad depressive episodes or periods of instability for her. I recently made a new friend who I have developed a solid crush on. We message often, and we had a lovely first hang in person, and I think that this energy is reciprocated. She knows I'm in a long-term relationship, but I've spoken about my partner less than I would if this was a new friend that I didn't find so attractive. All things considered, now is probably a good time to have the non-monogamy conversation, but I have no idea how. I don't want my partner to think that I'm only bringing this up due to this new friend that she knows I've made, because I am also interested in exploring my identity more, gaining more experience, and maybe even returning to sexual experiences with men after 7 years. It's also important to me that she continues to be my top first priority. So all of this in mind, do you have any advice on how best to approach this conversation and what I can say?
All right, therapy, Jeff, or Jeff. May I call you just Jeff?
It's just Jeff. It's fine. Yeah.
So the caller doesn't want her partner to make an assumption. She doesn't want her partner to assume she's bringing this up now because she met someone she wants to fuck around with, even though that assumption is 100% correct. That is why she wants to bring it up right now.
Yes.
So what would your advice be around trauma-informed non-monogamy conversations for the couple that has managed some trauma-informed intimacy?
I like that she wants to have a trauma-informed conversation. Which basically kind of means like, it's like, if you're going to have a trauma-informed conversation around non-monogamy, it's going to assume that like their partner's past is still kind of like shaping their reactions today. So you need to lead with like safety and gentleness and clarity and like zero surprise attacks, which is a little tricky because this feels a bit like a surprise attack. Like, they are all of a sudden feeling a little crushy on this new person, and you'd likely want to bring up non-monogamy without like this thing in the background of like, and I want to also fuck this person or hook up with this person. So you're already kind of going in in somewhat of a funky way. But
wait, what is she supposed to do? To kill that person so she's coming in clean?
There's nothing you can do. I think you just have to be honest and direct about it. And so, but like understand that could be triggering, right? But first, before you even get there, like regulate first, which means like do not bring this up in the middle of like watching a fucking Netflix movie, or when you're in an argument, or you're like out in public and it doesn't feel like a safe space. Make sure you also have your clothes on. I feel like a lot of people like are naked in bed or just had sex, and it's such a vulnerable feeling having a serious conversation when you don't have clothes on. So like figure out the best time to have this conversation when like everything's good, and then tell the truth. Tell the truth. Be direct and do it like without urgency. So yeah, maybe you started to think about this even more because of this person that you have a crush on, but I don't want you to talk about it in a way of like, can we figure this out so that I can fuck this person next weekend? Right?
Or tonight.
Or tonight, yes.
I need to fuck them tonight. We need to nail this down.
Yes.
The risk here when I was listening to the call was, all right, so if you can play it cool and you can manage to bring this up as if it just popped back into your head apropos of nothing, and you wanted to reopen the question about non-monogamy or some degree of openness, ... Your partner caller is going to ask if there's a reason why now, if there's somebody else. And if you lie, I promise you, your partner is going to put two and two together when this other person suddenly appears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to be traumatized, not by the ask, but by the deceit, by the hiding the ball or hiding the boobs or whatever it is that you're hiding the balls or the boobs, whoever this other person is.
Mm-hmm.
Caller said they might be interested in playing with men now. Maybe that might be triggering for their partner. But it's always it's going to be a difficult and tricky conversation. And just because somebody told you early on that they would be open to having a conversation about non-monogamy in the future, a lot of people, especially progressive, liberal types will say that because they think that's something they should say or should aspire to, which is not true. Monogamy works for a lot of people, and you can be sexually liberated. There's nothing sexually repressed about wanting a monogamous relationship or preferring it. But I've had cases where people like have said, I want a non-monogamous relationship because they think that's more highly evolved and they want to make a good impression about how highly evolved they are, but they actually don't want it. So you'd be revisiting this issue with your partner, and your partner might not actually want what she told you she might want or might be open to. And and then what? But I agree with Jeff. Do not fucking lie. Do not hide this ball because she is going to spot the ball. And then that becomes the issue, that you hid the ball. Not that you want an open relationship, not that you're touching somebody else with your genitals, but that you lied to me about why now.
Yeah, your traumatized partner is so fucking hypervigilant about what's going on, which includes like a sense of intuition. No fucking way you're hiding this. So you have to lead with it, and you also have to give her room for a reaction. Because there's going to be some sort of reaction. And like you're saying, like maybe early on you're saying you want non-monogamy, but you actually don't, but you feel like you're a good progressive saying that. There's also like in your values and your relationship desires, you may really want non-monogamy, but your nervous system does not. But your trauma from the past does not. And that's why you have to leave so much room for the reaction. And that reaction might last the whole night or for weeks, right? So it's about addressing like that trauma or that reaction and not being like, I want to fuck this person tonight. And so you have to also create guardrails, right? So what would help you feel safe and not threatened if we like explored all of this? Does that mean that I'm not going to hook up with this person? Does that mean that I hook up with other people first? Do I make out with somebody and then you get to watch it? Like what is working for us here? I think the trap is also like, it turns into sometimes like my desire versus your trauma. And now you're in competition.
Well, who wins? Does trauma always win? Is trauma always a trump card? Because I don't think that should be the case, because then trauma or an appeal to trauma can become a lever of control in a relationship, that the always more person with the more traumatic sexual history or emotional history, they always have to be deferred to. How does that not incentivize the weaponization of a history of trauma if it always gets you your way?
Great question. It's because it does. You need to be with somebody who understands how the trauma is affecting them, affecting like how they think, what they want in relationships. You need to be with somebody who's like, ooh, my nervous system is freaking the fuck out right now, which means I'm coming from like my traumatic lens and I can't have this conversation with you. Instead, I need to feel close. I need to be soothed. I need to go for a fucking walk, right? So you need to like get in touch with your value system of like, actually, I do want to be non-monogamous. And I don't know, you've probably heard of this before, but sometimes what's helpful is for right when you decide that maybe you want to try non-monogamy or be poly, you write a letter to each other about like, these are the reasons I want to do it, because my love will feel expansive, because I get to have the sexual adventure with you, because I get to take risks, and it creates even more safety and security actually in all these ways. So then revisiting those letters and reading them to each other, understanding that like we need to soothe the trauma, but we don't want the trauma to just hijack every single fucking conversation, which means you might just only have to have these conversations with a qualified relationship therapist who can get you through it. Yes.
But I sometimes get nervous about people feeling like if their partner has trauma, that their desires are invalid or must always be deprioritized. Because I do think we have to be considerate of our partner's trauma, and we need to approach a conversation where there's going to be a conflict about what we both might want, with awareness and kindness and compassion and consideration of trauma, but not this attitude that trauma carries the day, trauma wins the argument, that the more traumatized partner must always be deferred to.
And if you're always deferring to the traumatized partner, then they just get to stay traumatized forever.
It incentivizes being traumatized forever.
Yes.
Like, as long as I'm on fire, everything's going to be just the way I want it to be. Therefore, I'm never going to put this fire out.
No. So the goal is having this is therapy speak, but you'll get it, just a corrective experience. You need to go do the hard thing, while being safe and, slow, whatever, in order to have a corrective experience. So this trauma isn't having such a powerful effect on you anymore. So if we can all agree on that's the goal and how to reach it. And for me, if I'm like dating somebody who has like this trauma, but we want to move forward, all I have to know is that we're having conversations about it and that there's some movement forward. The movement forward can be slow as fuck. I don't care. But as long as there's movement forward, then I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Oh my God, I want to complicate this though and say, like, so long as there's some movement forward, sometimes people are trying to run out the clock over a period of decades. Like, we're working on this, I'm making progress, I'm not ready, and they're never going to be ready. But they're breadcrumbing you to the grave, right?
Sure.
To use another therapy speak term. There's something else I wanted to toss in. We need to get to these other two questions.
Okay.
A first reaction is not a final answer. Like, people write to me all the time because they want to know how to say something that's potentially upsetting without upsetting their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to risk saying the thing that might upset your partner, and then you keep fucking talking. And a lot of times people, when it comes to opening a relationship or some other request, will have an initial negative reaction out of fear of the unknown or a big change or what that might mean. Like, you're slow rolling, I want to end the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that first reaction isn't the final answer. And so let your partner be angry. Like, don't take it personally if they flip out. If the first answer is no, doesn't mean the final answer is no. Might be no, finally, in the end. But it doesn't mean it definitely will be no. But it's
good point.
My conversation with Therapy Jeff continues on the Magnum version of the Savage Lovecast. Therapy Jeff and I even get into a fight, which only seems appropriate for a trauma-informed Thanksgiving show. That is on the Magnum, which you can subscribe to or give as a gift over at savage.love. We appreciate all of our listeners, all of our supporters, micro listeners, and Magnum subs alike. But if you want more Savage Love, more Lovecast, and more of Jeff, and if you want to hear me and Jeff, go at it. Become a sub now at savage.love. What do you want? Not family, not friends, not society at large. What do you want? What do you want, and how do you want it? Without the noise of external opinions, you have the space to find out. On the dating app Field, curiosity leads the way towards intimacy with others and yourself. Desires, interests, the space to change again and again. There's room for all of it there. If you have a fantasy, say it. If you have a desire, include it in your bio. No one ever got what they wanted without asking for it. And on Field, you can ask for it. And if you ask for it, you might just get what you want. On Field, there's no need to write your profile like a job application and pretend to be what someone else wants. Within the Field community, the cultural norm is to be radically honest about who you are and what you want. And that helps you find exactly what you're looking for. They don't gatekeep connection. In an age where dating apps create hurdles to finding your people, Field is built differently. They don't try to guide your desires either. You get to be you. And you can change. On Field, who you were yesterday may not be who you are tomorrow. 62% of Field members evolve their sexuality, interests, and desires within their first year on the app. In a place where there's no pressure to be anything, who will you be? Expand your curiosity. There are 20 plus sexuality and gender identities listed on Field. In this space, you can explore who you are without judgment. See what you have in common. Know what you're looking for. Field just rolled out their Shared Desires feature that immediately shows you what you have in common with someone else. Download Field. That's FEELD on the App Store or Google Play and find out why so many of my listeners are already using it.
Hi, Dan. I'm 40 years old, bisexual man. I have a question about my neighbor's sex life. I like that one. So I always prevented myself to make some moves towards her because I do have quite intense fantasies, like very dommy fantasy, which I didn't have that much at that time in my life. So I refrained myself to go for it or propose something Because she's my neighbor. I'm polyamorous. I do fuck in my bedroom. I don't want things to be complicated right now. I don't think she's poly up to that point. So yeah, I don't think it's a good it's a good feel out there, good context. So what do you think? Should I go for it? Should I propose something, or should I keep my mouth shut because I don't feel like it to get things complicated being neighbors?
I'm a shoot your shot kind of guy in general, but I am going to advise you against shooting this particular shot. You don't know if your neighbor is attracted to you. You don't know if your neighbor is poly. I'm assuming maybe your neighbor has a partner or you have a partner. You don't know if they're down and poly, and you don't know if your neighbor is into dom, sub, sex. Considering those three big unknowns, I think the risk of making your neighbor feel uncomfortable, of things being super duper awkward forever, for as long as you live near each other, or at least until the awkwardness burns out. Awkwardness can pass, especially if there's any chance of any awkwardness when you're going to hit on somebody because they're a friend or they're somebody that you work with and you're not over or under at work. It always, you've heard me say this before, if you're a regular listener to the show, if there's any awkwardness, the awkwardness can pass, and it will pass faster if you say, it'll be awkward if you say no, but please say no if the answer is no, and we will power through the awkwardness, and I promise not to be resentful, a weirdo, or ask again later if the answer is no. And just acknowledging that it is going to be awkward has this evaporating the awkwardness magic, or hurrying the evaporation of the awkwardness magic. It doesn't instantly disappear the awkwardness, but I just don't think the risk of awkwardness here is worth it, because don't know if she's poly, don't know if she's kinky, don't know if she's attracted to you. Three big unknowns. I would, if I were you and you were interested, you had fantasies about being a dom, get on Field, get on FetLife, get on one of the big kinky, sexy dating apps, or just be out on a regular straight dating app about being interested in DS sex and being a novice at DS sex. Those sites are full of people who are buying what you're selling. People who are poly, people who are kinky, or just getting started and wanting to explore DS dynamics, power exchange dynamics, whether they're just subtle or elaborate kink scenes with props and costumes and special dungeons. There are women out there like you who are novices when it comes to DS sex. Now, one of the mistakes I sometimes think that novices make is they think that they need to find someone who's experienced to show them the ropes. And so many subby women who are just getting on the apps, just looking for a male dom to explore with, have had bad experiences with guys who leveraged their experience, their real or imagined experience, to manipulate a sub. I think it can be good for someone who's an inexperienced male dom to lead with, I'm inexperienced, looking for somebody also inexperienced, maybe, so we can take the tiniest of baby steps together and just be really blunt and open and honest about that. And while I think a lot of subs, people interested in DSX who get online looking for those first experiences, are inclined naturally perhaps to seek out people who are more experienced than they are or have vast experience, I think that kind of counter messaging could be effective for the inexperienced wannabe straight male dom. And I would encourage you maybe to do that. And who knows, maybe your neighbor is on one of those apps. Maybe they're already on Field or FetLife and they are looking to buy what you are looking to sell, or they're selling what you're buying. It's a long shot, but it's no longer a shot than what you're already contemplating, which is assuming your neighbor is into you, into kink, and into poly. Facts that are not in evidence, three things, three planets that are unlikely to align neatly. So, not worth the risk of the awkwardness. Don't do it. All right, time for listener feedback. First up, a few comments listeners left in the comment threads about last week's show at savage.love. Says Red Blonde, Dan, in this economy, telling the young people they can't move in with a partner and save money until they're 30 is kind of bonkers. I agree, young lesbians shouldn't rush into living with someone, but if they keep their finances separate and the caller is putting aside the money she's saving on rent, it won't be terrible if she has to move out should she and her girlfriend break up. Says Rhymes with Quiche to the caller, experiencing subdrop without the support of a supportive partner. I also get some pretty intense subdrop, and sometimes I get it after playing with people who are relative strangers, so they absolutely do not check in. I recommend connecting with other subs who get it and can provide emotional support, cuddling with animals, and having social hangs with people who care about you. All good advice. Rhymes with Quiche. Thank you for taking a minute. Says Force Majeure, disappointed with Dan's manly men can't be emotionally sensitive take. Can we please decouple masculinity from just being an uncaring asshole? You can be a manly man and still provide good aftercare. Let's normalize bearded and burly and caring about your partner's needs. Let's normalize watching the game with the boys on Sunday and crying at a Pixar movie with your partner on Monday. All right, for the record, manly men can be emotionally sensitive. It was this caller, the caller experiencing subdrop and not getting a lot of attention from the guy who put her into that condition. It was her experience of this manly man that he couldn't. And she's into him in part because he has manly man vibes, and manly man vibes do correlate strongly with emotional insensitivity. She found a way, the caller did, to control for this partner's emotional limitations. No play the last 24 hours when they're together. She needs to stick to that given who she knows this guy to be. Please see blood, turnips, period. There was also tons of great comments, lots of really good advice for the mom of the suddenly religious teenager who called in last week, and for the woman who was thinking about getting into sex work because she felt she had no other options. Those comments, all of that advice, too long to quote here, long and thoughtful comments, but a lot of great comments for both callers. Thank you to everyone who took a minute to weigh in and share your perspectives. All right, if you have something to say about something I said on this week's show, go to savage.love and say it. And now, Savage Love listeners who left voicemails on our answering machine about last week's show get to have, as they always do, the last word on this week's show.
Hey, this is for the caller in episode 994 who's getting demoted from primary to secondary in her poly relationship. My advice would be that she needs to take a step back from the labels for a second and ask in a very granular and specific manner, like, what is it about her and her partner's current relationship that he wants to de-escalate or take off the table? And what is it about his other relationship that he wants to add to that he doesn't currently have? And if she's okay with the things in practice but not the label, then maybe they just need to use different labels. I often think one of the only or most significant problems with conventional poly hierarchy is just the terms primary and secondary. Like Dan often puts it as having a husband and boyfriends, and a boyfriend is still something you would want to be, whereas most people would not in any situation want to be a quote unquote secondary. It's just, in my opinion, not a super nice way to refer to a person.
Hi, Dan. This is a response to the caller who wanted to be friends with the fuck buddy. I am well known in my friend group for being friends with exes and ex-fuck buddies and friends with benefits, even when the benefits stop. And that's largely because I treat them like friends, even when we're sleeping together. We do friend things together. We watch movies. We play games. We go to parties. We do things other than having sex or massages that end up in sex. I think the caller is going to have a real hard time justifying a friendship when there's none of the typical friend activities that you would do.
This is response to the caller whose ex-boyfriend had a big dick. When someone asks why you're not with him anymore, all you have to say is, we were not a good fit.
And we are going to leave it there. There are so many ways for you to be on the show, to ask a question for the Savage Lovecast or leave a comment about the Savage Lovecast. You can record it and email it to q@savage.love, or you can call us at 206-302-2064 and leave us a message on our answering machine, or you can go to savage.love/askdan. I am still accepting short questions, 1 minute or less, for our 1000th episode, which is coming up in January. It's going to be a quickie show. If you want to be a part of it, hit us with your quick question. And if you had a new sexual experience and you want to share, email us also at q@savage.love and come on After Action Report and talk with me about it. You've only a few days left to submit a film for Hump 2026. All submissions for the 2026 Hump Film Festival are due by December 5th. Grab some friends, grab your phone, make a hot, kinky, weird, fun little movie. There's no fee to enter Hump. There are prizes, $10,000 in cash prizes awarded by Hump audiences, and all the films that make it into the festival, all the filmmakers get a percentage of every ticket to Hump sold. Go to humpfilmfest.com right now to learn how you can be a part of the best dirty little film festival in the world. Follow me at Blue Sky at Dan Savage. Follow me on Instagram at Dan Savage. Follow Jeff Gunther, Therapy Jeff, on Instagram and TikTok at Therapy Jeff. Listen to his podcast, Problem Solved, and read his book, Big Dating Energy. The Savage Lovecast is produced every week by Nancy Hartunian and me and the tech-savvy at-risk you and Nancy. We will all be back at you next week with another installment of the Savage Lovecast. Thank you for time.